I never imagined that I would end up being that wife. You know, the one who occasionally finds herself staring at her spouse across the dinner table, wondering what the hell she did to marry him in the first place. My name is Tara, and I am 32 years old. I am currently participating in what seems to be an endless nightmare with a man who is unable to get his life in order. I swore to myself that Nathan and I used to be happy. In the past 7 years, he possessed ambition, drive, and a self-assurance that gave me the impression that we were capable of tackling any challenge. During that time, I would watch him get ready for work in the morning, all suited up in his button-downs, and I would swear to myself that I had just won the lottery. As I see him put on that ridiculous t-shirt for the delivery app, I can't help but feel like screaming. Since Nathan was terminated from his job 4 months ago, everything has been going from bad to worse. Over the course of 5 years, he was employed by that company. What did he receive? There was a pitiful severance payment and an email expressing gratitude for your service. At first, I made an effort to be supportive. In all honesty, I did. While he was anxious about finding a new job, I comforted him by holding him and assuring him that we would work it out together. However, the weeks grew into months, and his interviews that were promising turned out to be nothing but rejection emails. In the meantime, I am forced to spend the entire day at a job that I despise, answering phones and dealing with clients who are entitled to certain things. If I were to step in there every day, I would think to myself, this was supposed to be temporary. To ensure that we are able to maintain our standard of living while Nathan searches for opportunities, I am currently taking on additional shifts. I have had enough of hearing those words come out of his mouth. God. I am so exhausted. It was also not helpful that his father had passed away 2 years ago. The entire strict father routine was followed by Harold, who was usually harsh with Wesley, expected perfection from him, and pushed him to succeed. Something fell apart within Nathan when he passed away unexpectedly as a result of a heart attack. Despite the fact that he puts on a brave face, I am aware that he is not yet over it. He now pays his mother Margareta visit practically every weekend, which, to tell you the truth, is okay with me because that woman has never approved of me anyway, and she always looks at me as if I'm not good enough for her beloved son. Irony is something that I am aware of. It was at that moment that Tom, who was at work, began paying attention to me. At first, there was nothing that took place. Those who complimented me on my presentations or offered to get me a cup of coffee were completely harmless. However, after that, the text began, which consisted of late-night talks all about nothing and everything. In fact, he pays attention to what I have to say about my day. How long has it been since Nathan did something like that without making it about his search for a job? This DoorDash gig that Nathan is a joke. After spending the entire day driving around, he arrives home fatigued and proudly demonstrates to me how he made $87. In the meantime, I am bringing home actual paychecks that are just about sufficient to support our expenses. That's great, honey, I respond with a grin on my face, but I'm actually screaming within. Compute the numbers, Wesley. When you take into account the cost of gas and the amount of wear and tear on the vehicle, that is not even the minimum wage. Those who know me well believe that I ought to be more understanding. Melissa, who is my closest friend, has stated that at least he is making an effort. Now that her spouse has recently been promoted, it is simple for her to say. She does not comprehend what it is like to witness someone you once admired transform into whatever it is that Nathan is today. Before I even get out of bed in the morning, I will check my phone to see if there are any messages from Tom. I am not sure exactly when I started doing this. When Wesley's touch began to make my skin crawl rather than giving me butterflies, that was another telling moment. I am only aware of the fact that something needs to be altered because I am unable to continue living in this manner, harboring resentment toward the man I am meant to love while thinking about someone who makes me feel loved. From the time I went through the door, I had a feeling that something was amiss. Nathan was seated at our kitchen table, holding my phone in his hand, and he had an expression on his face that I had never seen before. It was a sight that came somewhere between anger and sadness. Who is this Tom? He inquired with a voice that was unnaturally calm. The pit of my stomach sank. Unfortunately, I had neglected to erase the mails. I said, he's just a coworker, and then I put my handbag down as if it were any other Tuesday. Please explain why you are going through my phone. There was no sound to Wesley's laugh. Are you just a coworker who sends you a text message at midnight, expressing his desire for you to be with him rather than, and I quote, your husband, who is a loser? I ought to have expressed my regret. If I had explained, I would have. Rather than that, I went on the offensive. You have the audacity to invade my personal space. I am using my own personal phone. The response that Nathan gave was, that I pay for, and he immediately appeared embarrassed because we both realized that it was a lie. Everything is now paid for by me. Is that true? You are the one who pays for it. For what amount of money, Wesley? Are you a DoorDash expert? There was a look on his face that should have prevented me from saying what I wanted to say, but it felt too good to finally voice everything that I had been thinking for months. As if they were trying to boil a boil, the conflict went on for hours. The words are like grenades, and every one of us is aware of just where to aim in order to do the most harm possible. When we had finally exhausted all of our options, Nathan went to sleep on the couch, and I spent the entire night staring at the ceiling, wondering how we had arrived at this point. The following morning, I made the announcement that I would be taking on additional shifts at my place of employment. I told him over coffee, someone needs to cover your half of the bills, and I watched his face collapse as he listened to me. At the same time, it seemed like a victory together with a defeat. I didn't tell him that during half of those shifts, I was actually sitting in Tom's car in the far corner of the parking lot, venting about my useless husband while Tom's hand slowly crept up my thigh. I didn't tell him that I was doing this. Despite the fact that nothing significant occurred, at least not in a physical sense, the emotional betrayal had already been finished. Nathan began leaving the apartment earlier and came home later than he had been doing previously. Whenever our paths crossed, we were like ships passing through the night, exchanging chilly pleasantries with one another. When I was in the restroom, I would hear him talking on the phone, his voice exuberant as he discussed the job opportunities that were available to him. I would then see him deflate when another rejection email arrived. During happy hours, I began to exaggerate the difficulties that we were having financially to my friends. I informed them that during the past few months, he has not made any contributions, but I made sure to leave out the money that he had faithfully donated to our account through DoorDash. As of right now, I am essentially a lady who is living alone and has a dependent. During the time that I was checking my phone for messages from Tom, they would shake their heads and buy me beverages, express their condolences. When Nathan walked in on me having a conversation with my sister over the phone about how humiliated I was over his unemployment, that was the moment that I finally broke down. He simply grabbed his keys and walked out without uttering a single word. When he finally arrived home at 3 in the morning, he smelled like the terrible coffee he had been drinking at whichever 24-hour cafe he had been sitting in to avoid me. I was aware that I ought to feel guilty, yet all I got was a sense of justification. If he didn't want me to complain about him, he needed to provide me with something great to talk about instead. All of my acquaintances were married to men who had careers and futures, men who did not spend their days driving around delivering food to individuals who were more prosperous than they were. I was the one who prepared dinner. I walked in after my Thursday shift, and Nathan was there to make the announcement. The apartment had a pungent aroma of garlic and oregano, and the table was set with the plates that we had used for our wedding gift, which would typically be stored away in the cabinet. "Is this a special occasion?" I inquired while placing my luggage on the counter, and I was immediately annoyed rather than pleased of the response. I was scheduled to meet Daniel for drinks in an hour, but I'll have to cancel my appointment now because of this. Not because there was a special occasion, but I just thought it would be good to eat together for a change. He pulled out my chair with a hopeful look that caused my chest to throb with a mixture of hatred and remorse. There was something between the two. I lowered my gaze to consider the spaghetti dish that he had prepared. Just before I could stop myself, I remarked that you had failed to create my favorite. The light that was shining in his eyes began to wane. I created the dish that we had the ingredients for. During the few minutes that we were eating, there was an awkward stillness that persisted until Nathan cleared his throat. When I walked in for an interview today, everything went quite smoothly. There is a post available at. That is exactly what you mentioned about the 3 interviews that came before. He was interrupted by me as I twirled the pasta around my fork without actually eating it. Insisting that this one is distinct, he stated. It was almost as if the person in charge of hiring told me that I am ideal for the position. I checked my phone under the table and remarked, "I'll believe it when I see an offer letter." I would then believe it. Daniel had already sent me 2 texts inquiring about my whereabouts. "You may at least give the impression that you are supportive." With a constrained tone, Nathan inquired. "To the best of my ability, I am working here. Am I right? This is due to the fact that, from where I am seated, it appears as though you are simply driving around town all day while I am working actual hours at a professional job." Wesley's fork made a grinding sound as it struck his plate. Is this a genuine job? Between interviews and deliveries, I am working a total of 12 hours every day. I applied for 50 jobs in a single week, and I received 50 rejections. I responded to each one. That is not fair, he exclaimed, raising the volume of his voice. There is a lot of competition for jobs right now. It appears that everyone else is doing well in terms of finding work. Perhaps the market is not the source of the issue. All of a sudden, Nathan stood up and grabbed his laptop, which he then opened and placed on the table. Do you want to have a look at what I've been up to? My application tracker is presented here. Here is the money I made from delivery. This is the spreadsheet that contains the status of each and every job that I have applied for. I took a quick look at the extensive charts and lists, but I didn't really pay attention to them. One of the credit cards that I had opened in his name was a credit card bill that he had minimized in the corner of the screen. This was the thing that drew my attention. Oh, what is that? With his eyes following mine, Nathan inquired. I was unable to prevent him from clicking on the statement before he did so. He was scrolling through charges that he had never committed, and his face became completely devoid of color. Is this something? This card was never opened by me. Defending myself, I stated that I needed to take action in order to keep us afloat. Your money from DoorDash is hardly enough to pay groceries. Without informing me, you went ahead and opened a credit card in my name. His voice was so quiet that it was dangerous. Oh, Tara, that is a fake. You shouldn't be so theatrical. I am married to you. What belongs to you is mine. Are you going to do this when my credit score is already in the trash as a result of my lack of employment? He appeared to be in a state of genuine panic for the very first time as he raked his hands through his hair. Considering that they will be checking my credit, how am I meant to get hired anywhere? It's possible that you ought to have given that some consideration before you made the decision to spend months being fussy about jobs. Are you picky? There is a wide range of positions that I have applied for, ranging from management to warehouse night hours. The week before last, I went to a petrol station for an interview. Your father started from nothing and worked his way up, always knowing exactly where he wanted to go. He would not have offered any explanations. This caused Nathan to flinch as if I had hit him. Please you not involve my father in this. Not at all. From the ground up, he had constructed an entire profession. His son, on the other hand, is incapable of simply holding down a simple job. Despite the fact that his voice was cracking, Nathan replied, you know how hard my dad was on me. He was never satisfied with anything for any reason. It was possible that he was correct, I pointed out, my words coming out like poison. It's possible that you simply aren't good enough. As he looked at me, Wesley's eyes began to well up with tears, which he quickly blinked away in an angry manner. Don't you mean to say that? Something sinister and gratifying unfolded in my chest at that moment. In the same way that I felt hurt by our situation, I wanted to hurt him as much as I can. Your deceased father would be extremely dissatisfied with you since you have become such a pitiful individual who is unable to provide for his wife. As soon as I finished speaking, I realized that I had gone beyond what was acceptable. Instantaneously, Wesley's face became contorted, and he lost all of the fight that he had been giving. He gave me a look that suggested he had lost the ability to identify me. There was a rush of shame that washed over me as I began to speak. Wesley, not at all, he mumbled as he turned his back on us and made his way to our bedroom. He closed the door with a gentle click, which, for some reason, caused more pain than if he had slammed it shut. As I stood in our kitchen admiring the half-eaten dinner that was becoming cold, I had the sensation that I had just destroyed something that could not be repaired. For a brief instant, I contemplated going after him, expressing my regret, and taking everything back completely. But I couldn't do it because of my pride. Rather than that, I reached for my keys and pocketbook. I yelled out, I need some air, but I did not anticipate receiving a response, and I did not receive one. I will return at a later time. Over the course of an hour, I drove about aimlessly, ignoring Tom's texts that were becoming increasingly agitated. At almost midnight, when I did finally make it back to my flat, it was completely silent. Overly silent. When I was on my way to our bedroom door, I heard something that completely froze me in my tracks. It was Nathan who was sobbing. It is not just crying. Shedding tears in a way that was so raw and broken that I had never heard before, not even at the burial of his father. My hand was up to knock on the door, but it never made contact with the door. I remained on the doorstep, motionless. It was intolerable to hear the sound of his sadness, especially considering that I was the one who caused it. After that, I did what cowards do. Taking a few steps back, I reclaimed my purse and proceeded to make a reservation for a hotel room using one of those hidden credit cards. When I was lying in the sterile hotel bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I convinced myself that I would take care of everything in the morning. That we would discuss it over. It was my hope that I would find a way to justify the things that I had spoken. But by the time I got back to my house in the morning, Nathan had already left. It was discovered that his toothbrush was stolen from the bathroom, and a small duffel bag was missing from the closet. A letter that said, "Staying at Mom's for a while, need space to think," was waiting for me on the kitchen counter next to my coffee cup that had not yet been consumed. Rather, "I adore you." No, we'll chat shortly. I was only confronted with the harsh fact that I had pushed him beyond his breaking point by using the most vicious words I could have chosen. Sophia and I had lunch the following day, and I informed her that he was simply being dramatic. When people are in a fight, they all say things that they do not mean. "Tara, you brought up his deceased father," she murmured, looking at me as if she had lost all familiarity with me. "That is quite a low point." I responded with a defensive tone, "You don't understand the pressure that I've been under. Currently, I am the only person who is able to maintain our financial stability." I failed to disclose to Sophia the fact that Nathan had attempted to provide me with his spreadsheets, that he had been working more diligently than I had given him credit for, and that I had been lying about my overtime hours in order to meet with Tom. In the narrative that I related, I played the role of the patient wife, rather than the antagonist of the piece. Nathan did not communicate with anyone for several days, providing only brief texts to indicate that he was still at his mother's house. I pretended to myself that I was giving him space, but in reality, I was trying to avoid the reckoning that I knew was going to come. Tom's insistence was growing, and he expressed a desire to increase the difficulty of the situation. It was much simpler for me to stay late at work, to let Daniel kiss me in his car, and to pretend that I deserved this attention after everything that I had gone through when Nathan was not physically present at home. A week progressed into 2 weeks. When Ryan, Wesley's friend, saw me at the grocery store, he purposefully turned down another aisle in order to avoid me. In the future, I came across him in the parking lot and challenged him over it. As I blocked his automobile with my cart, I remarked that how mature he was to avoid me in such a manner. I was the target of Ryan's openly disgusted gaze. "Nathan shared with us what you had to say about his father. My relationship with Robert was similar to that of a father, and I think he would be embarrassed by the way you are treating his kid." The statements were as jarring as a slap. I hissed at you, "Since you are not aware of our personal matters. I am aware that Nathan has been straining himself to exhaustion in an effort to locate a job through the course of the night while also making deliveries." Benjamin responded with a shot. "And I am aware that you have been seen out and about in the city with a guy who works at your office." It's true that he was aware of that as well. To my surprise, there was an email waiting for me when I arrived home. Documents about divorce. According to Wesley's petition, the reasons for his filing were emotional mistreatment and irreconcilable differences. The language used in the legal system was icy and conclusive, dissimilar to the kind and loving man that I had married 7 years before. Instantaneously, I called him, showing my fury. "Getting a divorce? Is that true? Is it only one fight?" Nathan responded to Tara, in a tone that was aloof and formal, that it wasn't just one battle. It was the final tipping point. "Over the course of several months, I have been making an effort, but you have been deceiving me, undermining me, and allegedly cheating on me." Despite the fact that I had never slept with him, I objected, as if that fact somehow exonerated me of responsibility. Nathan sighed and said, "I don't recognize who you've become. It hardly makes a difference. It's also possible that this is the person you've always been, and I simply didn't want to see it." Over the course of the subsequent weeks, a series of unsettling revelations occurred. Discrepancies in the number of overtime hours that I reported needed to be discussed, so my supervisor invited me into her office. It appears that a fellow employee had observed that I was absent from my desk for a significant portion of the extra hours that I claimed to have worked. As she spoke, her disappointment was clear to see. "We take time theft very seriously," she assured me. "You should take this as an official warning." After Nathan filed for divorce, Daniel vanished from my life practically quickly after the paperwork was submitted. He said this while immediately staring at the new intern. "I'm not looking to be someone's rebound," he emphasized. It was with a humiliating clarity that I came to the realization that I had been nothing more than a boost to his ego. He was able to exert influence over the married woman when she was in a vulnerable state. Even my closest friends began to distance themselves from me. I'm at a loss for words, I just don't know what to say again. The admission was made by Sophia during the lunch that would be our final meal together. Things that you've done are not something that the Emma that I know would have done. When I learned through mutual connections that Nathan had finally secured a promising position, it was the ultimate blow that I received. Not by way of a never-ending stream of internet applications, but rather by way of a person he connected with while delivering food. A senior executive who had been blown away by Wesley's character and his dedication to his career. The sour irony that his pitiful gig job had led to his career breakthrough was not lost on me. I was familiar with the situation. Rather than feeling joyful for him, I felt as though I had been cheated. My story that he hadn't been working hard enough when we were together was only strengthened by the fact that he had achieved success with his career after we had divided up. Why was he unable to accomplish this in the past if he was able to do it now? I vented my frustrations to whatever few people were still willing to listen to me, which was almost no one. Both parties were making progress in the divorce proceedings. Within the context of the settlement, Nathan was extremely generous, even more so than I deserved. I had a hard time recognizing him during the one mediation session we had together. However, it was not because he appeared to be physically different, rather, it was because the warmth that he had previously directed toward me had completely vanished, and in its place was a courteous detachment that made me feel like a stranger. I never intended to cause you any harm, I told you as we were leaving. This was a pitiful attempt at what could not be considered an apology. Nathan gazed at me for a considerable amount of time. In the end, he stated, I believe that you believe that. This is the most upsetting aspect. I was still not able to acclimate to my new reality 8 months after it had occurred. I was left with a job that I still detested but couldn't afford to quit after my overtime stunt caused me to be passed over for advancement. The divorce was finalized, and I was left with an apartment that I could hardly afford because of the circumstances. I was left with nothing except uncomfortable glances in the break room and the reputation of being that lady who cheated on her unemployed husband. Daniel had long since moved on to his next conquest, leaving me with nothing but the reputation. I had placed myself in the role of the antagonist in a story in which I had previously portrayed myself as the victim. The narrative had entirely reversed. The credit cards that I had opened in Wesley's name had also come back to haunt me. As part of the agreement we reached, I agreed to take responsibility for that debt, which had become a burden that I carried around with me wherever I went. Every single minimal payment served as a constant reminder of my dishonesty. Over the course of one evening, I was browsing around Facebook when I noticed that Nathan had been tagged in a picture. When I finally decided to click, my heart did a peculiar little flip as my finger lingered over the picture for a moment. There he was, smiling in a way that I hadn't seen him smile in years, at a backyard cookout that was being held at Ryan's house. I could tell that he had been going to the gym because he appeared to be in good health and had a lot of rest. I wanted to know why he couldn't have put in that effort when we were together, and the part of me that was angry wanted to know the reason. Those who were truthful were aware that it had nothing to do with their outward appearance. Someone told me that he was doing well at his new work, and I had heard this through the grapevine. Someone brought up the fact that he had even been granted a promotion. In the meantime, I continued to answer the same phones, deal with the same entitled people, and there were no prospects on the horizon. It came as a complete surprise when Sophia received the invitation to the birthday party. Since the divorce, we had not communicated very much with one another because of her disapproval of my conduct, which created an unpleasant barrier between us. However, we had been friends since college, and certain bonds do not totally break even when they under pressure. She sent me a text, "It's nothing major at my place," she said. "Would be thrilled to meet you." I was on the verge of declining since I thought it was a pity invite. On the other hand, the alternative was to spend yet another Saturday night alone myself in my flat, so I agreed to it with what I hoped would appear to be a casual enthusiasm. It was immediately apparent to me that I had made a mistake the instant I entered Melissa's living room. Although he had no right to be there, Nathan was there, standing by the snack table, looking better than he should have. We looked at one another across the room, and for a brief moment, I was taken back to the evening that we had first met, experiencing the same electrifying recognition that was traveling between us. After that, his look became more subdued and neutral, and shortly thereafter, the moment had passed. I was unaware that he would be present here. After giving Sophie a firm hug, I hushed her in a manner that suggested she was guilty. The response she gave was one of little sympathy, saying, "You both knew that we have the same friends." Moreover, he is currently dating one of my coworkers. I was unable to avoid inviting him in any way. The information struck me like a blow to the body. Would you date someone else? Have you already? I went around the room looking for the woman who had taken my position and began searching for her. Nathan approached us while maintaining the same courteous mask that he had been wearing. He said, "Tara," with a slight nod. "I am happy to see you. I managed to get you as well, despite the fact that I was utterly mortified by how out of breath I sounded. You have a nice appearance." His response was, "Thank you," and he then turned to Melissa. "It is anticipated that Olivia will arrive very soon. After a long day at work, she is now arriving." It was even her name, Jess, that was vivacious and straightforward. After having 2 glasses of wine and engaging in some terrible small talk with individuals who obviously did not know what to say to me, I found myself in Melissa's kitchen by myself, refilling my glass, when Nathan walked in for more beer. With that annoying politeness still in place, he inquired whether or not they were having a nice time. As the wine made me brave, I remarked that it was wonderful. "It appears that your new girlfriend is kind." Nathan let out a sigh. "Tara, let's not go with this. What should you do? Have a chat that is polite? Aren't people who have been divorced meant to behave in that manner?" As he made his way toward the entrance, he remarked, "I ought to get back to the party." We were both taken aback when I suddenly blurted out, "Wait. I've been wanting to share something with you. Concerning your father, I apologize for what I said earlier. It was always a mistake for me to go there." Despite the fact that Wesley's shoulders tightened, he turned around to face me. "No, you shouldn't have done it." As the words began to tumble out of my mouth, I added, "I said it because I loved you. I was merely attempting to motivate you to improve yourself. At times, it is necessary to be cruel in order to be nice." His face went from being indifferent to disbelieving in a matter of seconds. "Do you tell yourself that such is the case?" My insistence was that it is the truth. Including the emotional affair with your coworker, the credit card theft, and the lying about working extra, everything I did was because I wanted us to have a better life. I did everything because I wanted what was best for us. The head of Nathan was shaken. "There has been no change in you at all, has there?" Refusing to accept responsibility for the situation. My objection was that that was not fair. When you were busy pulling me down, I was carrying all of the financial weight while you were busy doing what? I applied to hundreds of jobs, did delivery gigs till 2 in the morning, and tried everything I could to contribute while you were busy doing these things. As time went on, Wesley's composure finally broke. "Do you have any idea what the saddest part was? I was fooled by you. I came to believe what you said when you said that my father would be disappointed in me. I had to go through several months of treatment before I realized that wasn't the case." Tears began to well up in my eyes. "To clarify, I never intended to." "I am sure you did." He interrupted me in a gentle manner. "You intended to give me pain because you were miserable and required someone to blame for your situation. This is something that I really wish you could admit to yourself." As soon as I was about to speak, Olivia materialized at the entranceway. "Is everything all right in this room?" Her gaze darted between us as she uttered the question. When Nathan looked at her, he smiled again and said, "Everything is fine." He was just getting caught up here. While he was leaving with her, his hand was resting gently on the small of her back. I was standing in the kitchen by myself, feeling the full weight of everything that I had suffered the loss of. During the time that I was driving back to my empty apartment, the only thing that kept running through my mind was the fact that Nathan had gone on while I was still stuck in the wreckage of what I had done. The truth that I missed him was something that I could not admit to anyone, and I could hardly even accept to myself. I was missing us. The manner in which we used to be before our financial situation became difficult, before his father passed away, and before I began seeking affirmation from sources other than our marriage. I promised myself that I would find someone new in my life at some point. Someone who would treat me with the same kind of appreciation that I thought Nathan had not shown me. And somebody who would be prosperous and secure, and who would never give me the impression that I was carrying an excessive amount of weight. One possibility that I was unable to bring myself to consider was the idea that the issue had never been Nathan in the first place. That it was possible, even if it was slim, that I was the one who was lacking in quality. It was not because I was unable to provide for us financially during his unemployment, rather, it was because I had chosen harshness over compassion at a time when he required my assistance the most. To continue to believe that I had done everything correctly and that I had loved him in the most effective manner that I was aware of was simpler. Instead of being the intentional blow to the heart that it was intended to be, the fact that he said his father would be upset must have been some kind of warped type of motivation. That night, when I slid into my empty bed, I consoled myself with the thought that Nathan had simply never understood how difficult it had been for me, how much pressure I had been under. I was under a lot of pressure. The circumstances, the timing, and the fact that my spouse took an excessive amount of time to get his act together made me the true victim in this situation. And as I began to drift off to sleep by myself, a small voice whispered from someplace deep inside me that perhaps, just possibly, his father would have been disappointed in me as well.